Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In Russia, at least 37 people have been killed after two female suicide bombers attacked a pair of subway stations in Moscow at the peak of the morning rush hour. More than 70 people were injured. One of the blasts occurred at a station underneath the main offices of the Federal Security Service, the main successor to the KGB. No group has yet claimed responsibility, but Russian officials suspect it was carried out by rebels fighting for independence in Chechnya. Last month, the Chechen rebel leader said, quote, "The zone of military operations will be extended to the territory of Russia. The war is coming to their cities." President Obama made a surprise visit to Afghanistan Sunday, his first since taking office. Due to security concerns, Obama secretly flew into Kabul at night. He left 6 hours later while it was still dark. The trip came 4 months after President Obama ordered 30,000 more troops to Afghanistan in a major escalation of the war. During his brief trip, Obama met Afghan President Hamid Karzai and then spoke before a group of U.S. soldiers.
Plots against our homeland, plots against our allies, plots against the Afghan and Pakistani people are taking place as we speak right here. And if this region slides backwards, if the Taliban retakes this country, and al-Qaeda can operate with impunity, then more American lives will be at stake. The Afghan people will lose their chance at progress and prosperity, and the world will be significantly less secure.
Meanwhile, military officials in Kabul have admitted U.S. and NATO troops have killed 30 Afghans and wounded 80 others at or near military checkpoints since last summer. In no instance did the victims prove to be a danger to troops. In a recent video conference, Military Commander General Stanley McChrystal said, quote, "We have shot an amazing number of people, but to my knowledge, none has ever proven to be a threat." The FBI-led Joint Terrorism Task Force raided properties in Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois over the weekend and arrested members of a self-described Christian militia called the Hucklery. At least 7 people were arrested. Charges will be unsealed today. Officials have said little about the arrest, but members of other militias in Michigan said they'd heard the FBI targeted the Hucklery after its members made threats of violence against Islamic organizations. Video posted on YouTube shows armed members of the military conducting military-like training exercises. Part of the group's website reads, quote, "Jesus wanted us to be ready to defend ourselves using the sword." A recent report by the Southern Poverty Law Center found the number of right-wing militias tripled last year from 42 to 127. In Iraq, Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki is challenging the results of the recent elections that were narrowly won by former interim Prime Minister Iyad Allawi. On Friday, the United Nations and the Independent High Electoral Commission announced Allawi's Iraqi party won 91 parliamentary seats. Maliki's State of Law party won 89 seats. Allawi won after receiving the backing of many Sunni parties. The New York Times reports Maliki has taken a number of steps to overturn the election results. On Thursday, a day before the results were announced, he quietly persuaded the Iraqi Supreme Court to issue a ruling that potentially allows him to choose the new government instead of awarding that right to the winner of the election. Meanwhile, officials in charge of purging the government of former members of Saddam Hussein's Ba'ath Party have said they expect to disqualify more than 50 political candidates, many of them members of Allawi's Iraqi party. That could strip Allawi of his victory. Prime Minister Maliki is also clamoring for a recount and is considering filing a legal appeal. While Iyad Allawi's party won the most seats, the party fell short of a majority. He'll need to form a coalition government in the coming weeks.
We hope to enthrone this achievement by forming the government as quickly as possible. A government that is capable of providing security from one side and to offer the appropriate services to its people on the other side.
There is concern the political tension could lead to an upswing in violence. On Sunday, 6 people died in western Iraq, including an official of a political faction and former Prime Minister Allawi's electoral coalition. On Friday, a few hours before election results were released, 2 bombs struck a crowded market in Iraq's mainly Sunni northern Diyala province, killing 59 and wounding 73. Earlier today, a pair of car bombs in the holy city of Karbala killed at least 4 people and wounded 22. President Obama and Russian President Dmitry Medvedev have sealed an agreement on a landmark nuclear arms reduction treaty. Obama and Medvedev plan to officially sign the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty on April 8th in Prague.
And broadly speaking, the new START treaty makes progress in several areas. It cuts by about a third the nuclear weapons that the United States and Russia will deploy. It significantly reduces missiles and launchers. It puts in place a strong and effective verification regime, and it maintains the flexibility that we need to protect and advance our national security and to guarantee our unwavering commitment to the security of our allies.
While President Obama said the treaty will cut the U.S. and Russian nuclear arsenals by a third, arms control experts warn the figure's misleading because the new pact used different counting rules than previous agreements. Hans Christensen of the Federation of American Scientists said the new deal could represent an actual decline of only about 100 or 200 nuclear weapons, a reduction of only as much as 13%. Stephen Pfeiffer of the Brookings Institution said the deal could improve U.S.-Russian relations.
Well, I think it's significant because this is the first real agreement that you've had governing strategic arms reductions in almost 2 decades, going back to the 1991 Strategic Arms Reductions Treaty. So that's important. It's a foreign policy victory. It's good for the administration's effort to build a better relationship with Russia, and it's good for the overall commitment on nuclear non-proliferation.
In economic news, the unemployment rate increased in 27 states last month. Florida, Nevada, Georgia, and North Carolina set record levels of joblessness in February. 15 states had unemployment of 10% or higher. In news from Washington, President Obama sidestepped the Senate confirmation process and made 15 recess appointments. The appointees include former AFL-CIO official Craig Becker, who was named to a seat on the National Labor Relations Board. Becker's appointment comes 1 month after 2 Democratic senators, Ben Nelson and Blanche Lincoln, joined with Republicans to block his nomination. Under the Constitution, the president has the authority to fill vacancies without the consent of the Senate when Congress is not in session. The Washington Post reports U.S. immigration authorities have set controversial new quotas for agents to deport more undocumented workers. The head of ICE detention and removal operations, James Chaparro, outlined the plan in a recent memo. He wrote that ICE is on pace to deport about 310,000 immigrants for the year ending September 30th, well below ICE's goal of 400,000 deportations a year. In the memo, Chaparro said ICE will increase the number of overall deportations by increasing detention space to hold more undocumented immigrants, by sweeping prisons to find more candidates for deportation, and launching a so-called surge in efforts to catch undocumented immigrants whose only violation was lying on immigration or visa applications or re-entering the United States after being deported. The moves outlined in the memo differ from public pledges by Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano to focus enforcement on the most dangerous illegal immigrants. Deportations of convicted criminals climbed 19% in 2009 and are on pace to climb 40% this year. Joan Friedland of the National Immigration Law Center criticized the ICE memo, saying quotas will encourage agents to target easy cases, not the ones who pose the greatest safety risk. Israel's threatening to stage more attacks in Gaza after a bloody weekend left 2 Israeli soldiers and 4 Palestinian militants dead. The deaths occurred after Israeli tanks and bulldozers crossed into Gaza. Defense Minister Ehud Barak warned Hamas that Israel would react harshly to any escalation along its border with the Gaza Strip. Here in New York, a state judge has blocked New York City from closing 19 public schools. In a ruling, the judge said the panel for education policy committed, quote, significant violations of education law and, quote, appeared to trivialize the whole notion of community involvement in decisions regarding the closing or phasing out of schools. Under Mayor Mike Bloomberg, 91 schools in the city have been closed and replaced with clusters of smaller schools and charter schools. The lawsuit to block the school closings was filed by the United Federation of Teachers, and the NAACP sued last month to stop the closures as well. And in South Africa, nearly 6,000 people participated in the 25th annual Gandhi Walk in memory of the Indian leader, Mahatma Gandhi. On Sunday, the occasion also marked the 150th anniversary of the arrival of the first indentured Indian workers in South Africa in 1860. South Africa now has over 1 million people of Indian or Asian origin. Walkers included Thabo Masemola.
It's a very special occasion because whilst we are exercising, we're walking with the memory of the Gandhi. If you remember the 1860 settlers, when they came into South Africa, the depth at which Gandhi worked for the liberation of the country, it's a very magnificent feeling. You walk knowing the spirits are walking with you.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Good.